Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so excited to get into this one with you because we are tracking one of the most incredible geographic and political transformations in history. We're looking at the evolution of Shimla. We're going to trace how a dense, basically empty Himalayan forest transformed into the glittering, high-altitude capital of the British Raj, and eventually the buzzing modern Indian city it is today. It's this wild story of intense geography, crazy engineering, and just pure ambition. So let's jump right in.
So who actually discovered Shimla? It sounds like a super simple question, right? But it totally challenges what a lot of people think they know. The common assumption, the story you usually hear, is that the British just kind of stumbled upon it while desperately looking for a cool place to escape those brutal Indian summers. But the historical sources? They tell a very different, much earlier story. Okay, let's actually bust that myth wide open. The British didn't show up and build their first little cottage until 1819. The real foundational moment of discovery and conquest. That happened well over a decade earlier. Back in 1806, it was actually Nepal's King Bhimsen Thapa who invaded the region and took control. That Gurkha conquest is the true starting point for Shimla popping up on the geopolitical map, way before the British ever set up their famous hill station.
Section 1. Discovering Shamala Devi. From a dense forest to a lone temple.
Right. So before 1815, this whole area was part of the Keonthal princely state. And aside from ancient tribes like the Adambrias living down in the lower foothills, early settlement up in these incredibly thick pine and cedar forests was practically zero. Actually, hiding in those quiet woods was basically just one main marker of civilization. It was a lone temple dedicated to Shamala Devi, who is an avatar of the goddess Kali. And yes, it's from this exact deity that the region eventually got its modern name, Shimla. To really give you a sense of just how unbelievably remote this place was, listen to this entry from the Gerard Brothers Survey Diary. This is from August 30th, 1817. They describe the area as literally nothing more than a medium-sized house where a fakir gave water to travelers. I mean, just think about that for a second. Only a few years before it became the absolute nerve center of a massive empire, Shimla was basically a tiny water stop run by a single ascetic out in the middle of nowhere.
So why was it so empty? Well, this number pretty much explains it. 2,454 meters. That is over 8,000 feet, which is the peak altitude of Chaku Hill, Shimla's highest point. This extreme elevation created some seriously challenging, rugged topography. But, as you can guess, it also created that famously cool, crisp mountain climate. And that climate was about to become completely irresistible to foreign armies and bureaucrats who were just melting down in the plains.
And we're not just talking about one single peak here. The whole region is stretched across 7 distinct hills. We're talking Jaku Hill, Prospect Hill, Summer Hill, Bentoni, Elysium, Observatory, all the way to Inverarm Hill. This incredibly complex, multi-tiered terrain meant that building literally anything up here was going to be a monumental headache. But funny enough, it was exactly this dramatic, challenging landscape that was about to catch the eye of the British East India Company.
Section 2. The British Foothold, establishing a presence in the Himalayas.
Now, it's super important to note that the British didn't just wander up these hills looking for a vacation spot. Their arrival was strictly driven by the Anglo-Gurkha War. Let's look at how fast this actually happened. By 1815, after defeating the Gurkhas, they forced the Treaty of Sagali, which officially handed them control of the territory. Fast forward just 4 years to 1819, and Lieutenant Ross builds a basic wooden thatch cottage. Then, in 1822, Charles Pratt Kennedy upgrades things by building the first permanent, or pucca house. But the real game changer? That was 1827, when Governor-General Lord Amherst came up and stayed for 2 whole months. That official visit effectively stamped Shimla onto the map for the ruling elite.
But to actually grow into a town, they needed land. So in 1830, they made a highly strategic land exchange. The British acquired the crucial surrounding land from the Keonthal and Patiala chiefs, and they traded away the Rohini and Barali regions to get it. This specific deal was the true catalyst. It completely opened the floodgates for Shimla's explosive physical expansion.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how crazy that expansion was. That 1830 land deal kicked off an absolute boom. At the time of the exchange, there were exactly 30 houses in Shimla. By 1881, that number had skyrocketed to 1141. And it wasn't just European officials building fancy bungalows either. To support this exploding population, a massive wave of Indian merchants, especially from the Sood and Parsi communities, moved up into the mountains to set up shops and trade. That really fueled a massive demographic and economic boom.
Section 3. Crown of the Raj. Ruling the subcontinent from the mountains.
The real turning point for this era, though, was the 1857 uprising. Now, Shimla itself remained largely unaffected by it, but the event made the British deeply reconsider exactly how they were governing India. The solution came from Viceroy John Lawrence. In 1864, he officially formalized Shimla as the summer capital of the British Raj, and his logic was purely strategic. Shimla was perfectly positioned right between the Punjab and the northwest provinces. It was surrounded by what the British considered docile hill populations, but it was still close enough to keep a close eye on Awadh.
Because of that one decision, we get this incredible logistical reality: the annual migration. Every single spring, the entire imperial government, we're talking top officials, clerks, mountains of documents, the military brass, trekked all the way up from the searing heat of the plains and into the mountains. For over half the year, the entire Indian subcontinent was being ruled from these remote hilltops. It is literally staggering to think about the sheer amount of effort it took to pack up an empire's entire bureaucracy and drag it up a mountain every 12 months.
Naturally, this massive influx of power rapidly rewired the town's social fabric. During the 1870s, Lord Lytton kicked off some major town planning. Following a big fire in the Upper Bazaar, the town's original Indian residents were relocated to the lower and middle areas of the town. This cleared out the upper ridge, which was then transformed into a highly exclusive European center. That paved the way for those grand colonial structures you see today, like the town hall, the library, and the Gaiety Theater. Impartially speaking, this cemented a very clear, very deliberate socioeconomic divide right into the town's geography.
Section 4. Engineering the mountains. Overcoming extreme geography.
Obviously, building a sprawling imperial capital on steep Himalayan ridges required some monumental effort. They were really pushing the absolute limits of 19th century infrastructure here. Just look at some of these milestones. In 1844, they laid the foundation for Christ Church, which is still a massive landmark today. By 1851, a guy named Major Briggs directed the carving of a 170-meter tunnel, which we now call the Dali Tunnel, straight through solid rock to help build the Hindustan-Tibet Road. And then in 1903, they pulled off the ultimate engineering triumph, opening the Kalka-Shimla Railway.
I actually love this detail from the source material. The Kalka-Shimla Railway isn't just some charming old train line, it literally holds a Guinness World Record. It has the steepest altitude rise over a 96-kilometer narrow-gauge line anywhere in the world. This extraordinary feat of engineering is what finally transformed Shimla from this highly exclusive official enclave into a destination that ordinary travelers could actually reach. It is so historically significant that back in 2008, it was officially declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Section 5. A modern mountain hub. From colonial retreat to modern capital.
So the crucial point here is that as the British era finally drew to a close, a lot of those old colonial hill stations just faded into total obscurity. But not Shimla. It completely avoided that post-colonial decline by staying right at the center of the political action. In 1945, it hosted the incredibly pivotal Shimla Conference, which was a huge step toward Indian independence. When independence actually arrived in 1947, Shimla served as the temporary capital of Indian Punjab. In 1948, the state of Himachal Pradesh was formed right around it. And in 1972, the spelling was officially updated to Shimla with an H, the exact same year it hosted the historic Shimla Agreement between India and Pakistan. It literally never stopped being a center of vital political importance.
Which brings us to the vibrant, bustling reality of the city today. If you visit Shimla now, you are looking at Himachal Pradesh's largest city. It is a massive commercial and educational hub. We're talking 63 primary schools, plus prominent medical and dental colleges like the Indira Gandhi Medical College. It manages to successfully blend all that grand heritage architecture, like the Visigo Lodge and the Mall Road, with modern, everyday Indian life. It's thriving as a major tourist destination, and it's even become famous for outdoor sports like mountain biking.
But all of this incredible success brings us to a final, pretty pressing question. As Shimla continues to rapidly grow, how will it balance the preservation of its dense, complex history with the intense demands of an expanding modern mountain city? It is a fascinating challenge for a place that started out as nothing more than a lone temple and a quiet forest. I highly encourage you to dive into the sources to explore how this beautiful, historic city is navigating its future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.